dark nights are very similar to some of the experiences that are spoken of in this spiritual understanding of hell, such as alienation, rejection by God, terrible guilt feelings, feeling the opposite of God, losing the sense of God's love that would have, in the context of the night of sense, have usually occurred in some abundance earlier. In other words, it's as though your beloved or your spouse went off to on business trip to China or something and never came back. And the question arises, doesn't God remember me? Doesn't he know that I'm here waiting and I'm holding the candle of fidelity? And he never even mentioned that he was going on this trip. He just went. So presumably he doesn't care about me anymore. Or perhaps he never did, and all my efforts at trying to serve him are worthless. So those feelings, I don't say they're consented to in the night of spirit, but they arise as a psychological state or experience that's hard to deal with because there's no alternating consolations or reassurances that normally occur in earlier stages of this relationship. So one is getting into the engagement process or level of consciousness in the dark nights, preparing for a spiritual marriage in which the presence of God will be continuous. So to study what St. John of the Cross means, or to synopsize the main fruits of the night of spirit, is something that has been done in much spiritual literature following John of the Cross and others. But it should warn us to the fact that our self-centered aspects of our relation to God, our mixed motive for serving God, even for prayer, or our striving for enlightenment or transforming union or whatever it's described in the different religious traditions, while they're a good start, are not good enough. They're not a mature relationship with God, which is a two-way street. That is to say, we have to think of how we're going to please him and not just think of how he's going to please us all the time. And this comes as somewhat stark invitation, totally unacceptable to the ego, because it presupposes the death of the ego. And since this is the only self we know at this point, it's very uprooting and gives not only uneasy feelings, but sometimes unbearably long periods of boring boredom, and the severance of all of the things that we use to nourish our faith and our trust in God, and to deal with the difficulties of life when they were themselves somewhat overwhelming.